Is that the funniest name of a book you've ever seen? A porcupine named Fluffy. Do you know what a porcupine is? A porcupine is bigger than a squirrel, about the size of a groundhog, and they have really pointy things that come out of it to protect it. Isn't that neat how God gave each animal something to protect itself? And so if another animal tries to attack the porcupine, they get into a ball, and then those spines come out, and then it pokes them in the nose, and the other animals don't want to touch the porcupine. So to have a porcupine named Fluffy is kind of funny, because I don't know of any porcupines named Fluffy, but we'll find out about this one. So here's the story. When Mr. and Mrs. Porcupine had their first child, they were delighted, but now he needed a name. Do you see the picture? It's in a baby stroller. That's kind of funny, isn't it? Well, let's find out what happens. Should they call him Spike? No, Spike was too common. Look at these porcupines. They've got like crazy hair, don't they? Do you see that? And there's the baby. And there's Mr. and Mrs. Porcupine. Should they call him Lance? No, Lance sounded too fierce. Should they call him Needle Rooser? No, Needle Rooser was too long. Should they call him Prickles? Or maybe Pokey? Or Quillian? By the way, that's because sometimes they call them quills, are what porcupines have on them. So Quillian, it doesn't sound right. Then together they had an idea. Let's call him Fluffy. It's such a pretty name, Fluffy. Look at the baby. He's like, Fluffy, that's my name? Is that funny? Are you guys laughing right now? I can't imagine. Fluffy. But soon there came a time when Fluffy began to doubt what he was fluffy about. Look at this. He's looking in the mirror and he's like, well, I'm not exactly fluffy. Look at those quills that come out of him. Isn't that funny? He first became suspicious when he backed into a door and stuck fast. That was not a fluffy thing to do. You see what happened? That is so funny. You see how he kind of stuck right into the wall like some nails. That's not very fluffy, is it? He was even more convinced when he accidentally slept on his back and poked holes in the mattress. A very unfluffy thing to do. Look at that. So that means if you imagine being on an air mattress? He would poke holes in it and it would never last. He'd be flat, wouldn't he? Well, he tried to carry an umbrella, and he knew the truth without a doubt. Fluffy definitely wasn't him. Is that funny? Do you see what he's doing to the umbrella? He's poking right through the umbrella, isn't he? That's really funny. Do you think there's any porcupines around me right now? I'm kind of close to some woods. Could be. So he decided to become fluffier. Clouds are fluffy, he thought. I'll be a cloud. Have you ever thought about being a cloud? Have you ever just gone out into the yard and looked up into the clouds? Is that funny? He's at the top of a tree, but he couldn't stay up. No, he ended up falling over. Look at what the tree did. The tree fell right over. Did you see that? Fell right over on him. Well, let's find out what else happens. I know pillows are fluffy, he said. I'll be a pillow. But when his mother sat on him, she was not happy. Is that funny? Look at, ouch. He's trying to be a pillow. See those needles, those quills that come out? That's not nice. He tried soaking in a bubble bath for 45 minutes, but he did not become fluffy. He instead became soggy. Have you ever sat in a bathtub for 45 minutes? If you sat in a bathtub for 45 minutes, you'd get all wrinkly. He instead got soggy. He tried whipped cream, or Uncle Noah says whoop cream. He put a little on each quill. It was not easy, and it took more than half of a day. Oh, look at the whipped cream. Do you see that? It comes out, and he sprayed it onto his tail and onto his quills. Is that funny? But this did not make Fluffy fluffy. They should have named me Gooey, he said. Look at what happened. He just kept putting whipped cream all over him until he was one big whipped cream mess. He ate a lot of fluffy marshmallows. He rolled in shaving cream and feathers. Ugh. He even tried to become a bunny. Do you want to see these pictures? Look at, that's with marshmallows, and then that's with feathers, and that's when he tried to become a bunny. Is that silly? That's really silly, I think. But the truth remained, Fluffy wasn't. He's sitting here on the wall, realizing he's not really Fluffy. Do you think of your names? Do you look like a Grant? Or do you look like a Lydia? Or do you look like a Roland? Or a Wesley? Or a Caroline? I think they're cute. One afternoon, Fluffy set out for a walk, trying to think of ways to become Fluffy. Do you ever do that? You just go for a walk and say, I wonder. You just kind of think. Do you ever just sit and look up at the stars or at the clouds and you just think? Before long, he met a very large rhinoceros. Do you know what a rhinoceros is? Look at, that's a rhinoceros. They are really big, and look at their pointy nose. Youch. Do you know rhinoceroses can even flip over cars? They're so big. Grrr, said the rhinoceros. I'm going to give you a rough time. Fluffy didn't know what a rough time was, but he didn't like the sound of it at all. What is your name, small prickly thing? Asked the rhinoceros unkindly. Fluffy, said Fluffy. Look at how big the rhinoceros is compared to Fluffy. Oh man, see, Fluffy's really little, and then the rhinoceros is really big. The rhinoceros smiled, and then he giggled, then he laughed out loud, and he rolled on the ground, and he jiggled and slapped his knee, and then he started rolling with laughter. Is that funny? That's what the rhinoceros did. A porcupine named Fluffy, howled the rhinoceros. Look at, he's laughing so hard, he's now on his back and he's rolling. Isn't that funny? He just thinks it's so funny that a porcupine would be named Fluffy. Fluffy was embarrassed, but he tried to be polite. And what is your name, Fluffy? Asked the rhinoceros. See? Isn't that funny? I can't say, giggled the rhinoceros. Hubert? Suggested Fluffy. Hubert, can you imagine a rhinoceros named Hubert? That's kind of a funny name too. Rhinoceros doesn't really know what his name is, I guess. We'll find out here in just a minute. Help, I just can't say it. I'm laughing so hard, said the rhinoceros. Harold? Or maybe Harmon, asked Fluffy. No, gasped the rhinoceros. Hippo! Is that funny? That's what the rhinoceros ultimately said. He said his name is Hippo. Uh-oh. Look at that bird. That bird's listening in too. See him? That bird's looking down, sees the rhinoceros. The rhinoceros finally stops laughing enough to tell Fluffy that his name is Hippo. Hippo? A rhinoceros named Hippo? Fluffy smiled, and then Fluffy giggled. And then Fluffy laughed out loud, and he jiggled and slapped his knee, and he howled with laughter. A rhinoceros named Hippo, he cried. He was laughing so hard. Look at, he just thinks that's so funny. Fluffy just is laughing and laughing. He's got his tongue hanging out. And now, guess what? The hippo and Fluffy are both laughing hysterically. A porcupine named Fluffy, a rhinoceros named Hippo. It was almost more than they could bear. Hippo and Fluffy rolled on the ground, giggling and laughing until tears came to their eyes. Have you ever laughed so much until tears come to your eyes? Oma laughs. Sometimes she laughs at me, or she laughs at something funny. I know she loves to laugh at videos that she gets from your mommy and daddies when you guys are doing funny things. And Oma will start to have tears come down her eyes that she's laughing so much. At last they lay exhausted on the ground. From that time on, they were the best of friends. Isn't that neat? Because you know what? That's what humor does sometimes. Humor can bring people together by telling a joke or doing something funny rather than something that is hurtful. It makes friends. Friends sometimes come together because of something funny that happens, just something that they can both laugh about. And Fluffy didn't mind being Fluffy anymore, even though he wasn't. And that is the end of a really neat story.